Canadians traveling to the U.S. are facing new rules at the border after U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order on stricter requirements for foreign visitors.
President Trump in January 20th of this year is called Protecting the American People Against Invasion. So it's got a pretty embellished title. Canada's included in the list now. We used to be exempt from almost everything.
Something has quietly changed at the U.S. border, and many Canadians are only discovering it when they are already standing in line with their passports in hand. There were no dramatic press conferences, no flashing alerts on travel apps, just a new executive order signed in Washington that has fundamentally altered how Canadians are treated when they cross into the United States. For generations, crossing the border felt routine. Canadians were seen as familiar, trusted neighbors. RV travelers, snowbirds, families on road trips all moved back and forth with minimal friction. That sense of ease is now fading, not overnight, but deliberately. Under a new executive order signed by President Donald Trump, the United States has introduced stricter requirements for foreign visitors, including Canadians. The order directs the Department of Homeland Security to tighten screening procedures and expand registration rules for non-Americans staying in the country longer than 30 days. Starting December 26th, these changes take full effect, and they are already reshaping the experience at border crossings across the country. For many travelers, the shift feels personal. Some have chosen to turn around and go home rather than deal with the uncertainty. They speak of regret not because they dislike their time in the U.S., but because the process now feels tense, unfamiliar, and unpredictable. People who once felt welcomed now feel scrutinized. At the center of this shift is a policy that breaks with decades of precedent. Canadians who were once exempt from most foreign visitor requirements are no longer excluded. Canadian citizens and even permanent residents must now register if they plan to remain in the United States for more than 30 days. That registration may include mandatory fingerprinting photographs and expanded background checks. The name of the executive order itself signals the tone of the change. It is titled, Protecting the American People Against Invasion. That language alone has raised eyebrows among immigration experts. It frames border control not as administration but as defense, and under that framing, the border experience changes. Immigration lawyers say the difference is already noticeable. Examinations at ports of entry are longer, more detailed, and sometimes confrontational. Border officers are asking more questions, requesting more documents, and spending more time on each traveler. Part of this is policy. Officers have been instructed to scrutinize visitors more closely. Part of it is practical. With fewer people traveling overall, officers have more time to examine each individual case. The result is an environment where preparation matters more than ever. Canadians heading south can no longer rely on verbal explanations alone. Border officers now expect proof. They want documents that back up every answer. Proof of where you live, proof of your employment, proof that your life remains rooted in Canada. The key concept border officers focus on is domicile. They want to be convinced that you live in Canada and that your trip to the United States is temporary. That means travelers should carry documents that show ties to home. Lease agreements, mortgage statements, utility bills, tax filings, bank statements, employment letters. Anything that demonstrates your center of life is north of the border. Immigration specialists emphasize that this is not about suspicion of wrongdoing. It is about risk assessment. Officers are trained to verify that visitors will leave when they say they will. In the past, Canadians were largely trusted to do so. Now that trust must be documented. The advice from professionals is simple but firm. Make the officer's job easy, bring everything. Do not assume familiarity will smooth the process. Treat the crossing like a formal application, not a casual interaction. Answer questions directly. Provide documents without being prompted if they support your explanation. There is also confusion around the new rules. Some travelers report being told they need to fill out forms, while others are told the opposite. Some hear about registration requirements only after they arrive. This inconsistency adds to anxiety and frustration. Experts say the best approach is to over-prepare rather than rely on what happened during your last trip. The rules have changed, and enforcement may vary depending on the port of entry and the officer on duty. What worked last year may not work today. If a traveler runs into a problem, the advice is clear. Do not argue. Listen carefully to what the officer says is missing or insufficient. In many cases, travelers are allowed to withdraw their application for entry and return home voluntarily. That is often the best outcome if documents are lacking. What travelers should not do is try another crossing immediately. border officers share information. Attempting to enter at a different port after being turned away is often viewed negatively. Instead, take time to gather the requested documents and return prepared. Professional advice can also be valuable, especially for travelers who plan longer stays or who have complex circumstances. Immigration lawyers can help clarify requirements and prevent issues that could affect future travel. The broader implication of these changes is cultural as much as procedural. For decades, Canada and the United States enjoyed one of the most relaxed border relationships in the world. These new measures mark a shift toward a more transactional and security-focused approach. For snowbirds who spend months in the southern states, this change is particularly significant. Extended stays now come with registration obligations that did not previously exist. Failure to comply could lead to complications down the road, including difficulties pointing to future entries. For casual travelers, the change may simply mean longer lines, more questions, and a need to carry more paperwork. But the feeling of ease that once defined cross-border travel is clearly eroding. The timing of the changes also matters. With global travel patterns shifting and geopolitical tensions influencing domestic policy, border control has become a symbolic issue. The executive order reflects a broader emphasis on enforcement and control rather than accommodation. For Canadians, this represents a recalibration of expectations. The assumption that a Canadian passport guarantees smooth entry is no longer reliable. Entry is now conditional and increasingly discretionary. None of this means Canadians are unwelcome, but it does mean they are no longer exceptional. They are treated like other foreign visitors, subject to the same scrutiny and requirements. Immigration experts stress that compliance and preparation can still lead to smooth crossings. The system has not closed, it has hardened. Those who adapt will continue to travel successfully. The challenge lies in awareness. Many Canadians remain unaware of the new rules until they encounter them firsthand. That moment often comes at the border itself when options are limited and stress is high. As December approaches and the full implementation date arrives, more travelers are likely to encounter these requirements. Awareness and preparation will determine whether those encounters are manageable or disruptive. The border has not closed, but it has changed. And Canadians heading south would be wise to recognize that the era of casual crossings is coming to an end. What was once routine now requires intention. What was once assumed now must be proven. And for travelers accustomed to ease this adjustment may be the hardest part of all. The message from experts is consistent. Prepare thoroughly, carry documentation, understand the rules, and approach the border with the seriousness it now demands.